Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of this mini-series discussion on the 9th generation of consoles. I am your host, Martin, and today I'm joined by Colin as well as special guest MrMario2011. If you want to watch part 1, that will be linked in the description below and at the end card of this video. With that out of the way, we hope you guys enjoy. So the next thing we're going to talk about is our predictions and covering some rumors about the 9th generation of consoles. First of all, I want to stress that these rumors aren't exactly like super, I wouldn't call them like accurate as gospel, but these are interesting like aspects to go over because it might provide some insight into what the next consoles might be like. And I made sure to at least get some stuff that I would consider credible. So the first manufacturer we're going to talk about is Microsoft. They've had a lot of buzz recently with next generation consoles because they've been honestly the most open about it. I mean, at E3 2018, they teased that they're making a new console, so it's pretty much well known at this point. It's just the details of it that we're curious about. So the first thing we have here is not necessarily about a next-gen console, but more so an adaptation of an 8th generation console moving into the next generation. And what I'm referring to is codename Xbox Maverick. So what is this? Basically, for all intents and purposes, is a disc-less Xbox One S, which is very, very interesting. I mean, it even mentions that they might have a physical to digital program, which is crazy. So, Mario, what do you think about that?
I'll say I've heard these rumors, not from like anyone in particular, just like I've seen this rumor pop up so many times over the past few years. I'm a person who I prefer my games physically for many reasons. I'm also a physical collector, so it might be a little surprising for me to say this, but I think this would be a fantastic approach. Not only Xbox has Xbox Game Pass, which I think is an excellent program, and that's all digital right there. There's no physical way of doing that. But even prior to Xbox Game Pass coming out, I knew of so many people who just did digital only on the Xbox One, where they might have bought a few physical games and then they started buying digital, and they just kind of kept going on with that. I think with the way everything is as well too with Xbox Play Anywhere, and just how the Xbox One kind of has, might be a little controversial to say, but at times it might have like a little bit of like a PC feel to it with the ecosystem and everything there, where PC, like for example, I have a gaming PC and I don't want anything physical on PC. I want my library to be digital. I just want to double click something, download it in 2 minutes, and be ready to go. And it feels like digital is definitely the option that Microsoft is really pushing for on the Xbox One, but even something that many people prefer. So I guarantee there's people out there who have bought a Xbox One or a One S or a One X, and they've never popped a game disc in there just because they have all the games they want to digitally, and they still download and purchase more. That's not only just with the Xbox, that's with the PS4 and the Switch. I've seen it as well, but I'll kind of just keep it narrowed on the Xbox here. The big thing here is going to be the pricing. Like, first of all, if they do a physical to digital program, I think that'd be a really great way to entice people. The second thing, I think if they could sell the console brand new for $150 without a disc drive, that would appeal to so many people. I think that's what they should be aiming for, because if you just have a $150 Xbox One S that is priced at that, like that's a manufacturer suggested retail price, that will be such a hard thing to pass up for prospective owners, especially since now in 2019, I'm not going to be completely ignorant and say everyone's going digital, because there's so many places in the world where they still need those physical copies, and internet's very unreliable or very slow. But for the people who do have a digital-only collection or wants to go digital-only, this could be the push for them, or this could be something where it's just that perfect appeal to them.
When the Xbox launched, they launched with announcing that weird Orwellian, your disc was basically like a CD key type thing, and after you use it once, you can't use it, and you can't trade it in unless, and it seems like they're doing it again with this. The question being, I don't know. I feel like I can't really have a say in this rumor until I see it happen. Until they try to demonstrate it and explain how it isn't like some weird awful thing. like I think that's the best way of putting it. Okay. I don't think I'm I guess baseline. Xbox with no disc drive, sure, as long as it's an option.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine it being the main price of the console going forward. Or that means the main console going forward. And I think it's also important to stress that, like, the disc drive is not exactly an expensive component of a game console. It was on the PS3 when the Blu-ray drive was new, but I mean, those internal... You look up a sheet that explains what every component inside an Xbox costs, and a disc drive's like $30. So I don't know. It's also weird because this rumor almost sort of contradicts the latter rumor about Xbox that we're about to talk about in a second. With the idea of there being like 3 Xboxes on the market at any one point, which could... It's gonna be really confusing. I think ultimately... And then of course we have that possible, physical to digital program. That one, again, I just have to see that in action, or at least they have to explain how that would work. I'm sure with like NFC tech, like what we have with amiibos and stuff, that kind of thing is going to be really easy to do. But I don't know, there's just... I bought PUBG like a year ago for the Xbox One, and it was really weird to just buy a box with nothing in it, but like a little piece of paper that had like a code in it, which is how most PC games nowadays come, which I also don't like. I don't know if you guys have seen like the physical PC copies for COD World War II, Black Ops 4, Destiny 2, and like Fallout 76. It's literally just a DVD case with a cardboard disc inside with the code written on the disc, which is just so weird.
Yeah, no, whenever
yeah.
I personally got my physical, like the last time I bought a new physical PC game, which actually I think was Overwatch, I don't even use the discs on them. I open it and I just use the code and that's it. I really meant it when I said like no, when it comes to PC stuff, I don't want anything physical on that. I'll only get physical if it's cheaper.
With PC stuff, we literally don't have an option. Like there just isn't physical PC copies outside of the quote-unquote physical copies that they're selling that are just a code. I don't know.
So it sounds like you might not be as against the idea, it's just more the implementation. You want there to still be a physical option.
I mean, I like the PSP Go. Okay. So one time, Sony made a really good handheld, and then they made a really bad version of the handheld that was digital only and didn't take the little discs that the version of the console came with.
We were not ready for a digital-only PSP. The modders were, but the general public was not.
And the reason being was because not all video games were available on the store, which brought about that very, 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 very awkward moment that will be forever encrusted in that really funny Mega 64 video where the PSP Go launched alongside a brand new Soul Calibur game for the PSP, but there wasn't a digital version of it, so if you bought a PSP Go, you couldn't play the new Soul Calibur game on it, which is absolutely like egg on face terrible. Nowadays, everything's on the store because you have to download everything either when it comes to day one patches or just the general game data in general. So, as I said, I think the only thing that diskless console, if it's an option, sure. But the physical to digital program is what really makes me wonder how this works and what they're doing and what's the motive behind it. I wonder if they're gonna have some weird thing where you have to like send your physical copy to Microsoft and they send you a game code back, or you go to GameStop and they give you a game code in exchange for it. I don't know.
That's actually...
I don't know how this is gonna make them money. I don't know how this is gonna work.
That's actually exactly what I'm envisioning. The vision that I have is you go to either a Microsoft store or a participating retailer. Here, I'm going to use GameStop as an example. And you take your games in there, and with the physical program, you just go about, like, you give them your games. You're not going to get any credit or anything like that or any other bonus. And they just take your physical games, you sign off, and then they'll probably, since it's GameStop, print off a receipt that has a digital download code for every single game, and you just do an even swap that way.
Man, that sucks. I don't know. I mean, if it works, it works, but there has to be a catch, you know? Like, there has to be something, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, this rumor is kind of in a Mario and Rabbids kind of territory. I remember when that game leaked, there was a lot of people that were uneasy about how it worked, and I feel the same way about this rumor because we really don't have a concrete idea of how it's going to be implemented. I mean, we just have our own speculation to kind of fill in the gaps, and really it could go a one way really easily. It could be really awesome, or it could, you know, be total shit. You know, there could always be like some catchback of sort. You know, they could implement like a GameStop style buyback thing where it's like, oh, you can get this, but you can only get a discount on this or something. You know what I mean? Like, there's multiple ways they can implement it, and we just don't know. So yeah, this is very, very vague. But in terms of a diskless Xbox One, I mean, I'm all for giving consumers options. I don't think it's that outlandish in 2019. However, as stated, I do think having a disc option is kind of mandatory because there's still some people that want to go out and buy games physically, and not even just collectors or anything like that. A lot of people do like physical copies. So yeah, I think I'm all for the option as long as it doesn't become the mainstay for right now. You know, 10 years down the line, sure, implement it and we'll see how it goes. But for right now, it's just good as a sideline thing. But that's my 2 cents into it. But the next rumor, I think, is a little bit more interesting because it actually outlines their possible next-gen console. So to kind of explain it, there's a collective group of possible next-generation consoles from Microsoft being in development, codenamed collectively Scarlet. And I say collectively because, again, there are multiple variants. One is codenamed Anaconda, and the other one is codenamed Lockhart. So basically the whole point is one of them is going to act like the Xbox One S, and the other one is going to act like the Xbox One X. They're going to kind of do a similar model to what they did with the Xbox One later in its life. Anaconda is supposed to be like the massive, powerful one that is going to be a replacement for the Xbox One X, and Lockhart is going to be the successor to the Xbox One S. According to this rumor, they're also planning on implementing backwards compatibility still, so not only will Xbox One games work, but probably the ones I assume that were supported on One from the 360 and the OG Xbox will still be supported. And finally, they're going to implement some sort of GameCore OS, which I'm going to be honest, I have a little bit like I'm unsure about what that truly is. I think it's like a beta OS they're testing on Windows, maybe to make it more mainstream or something, but I have no clue. But Mario, what do you think about this rumor? What do you think?
So when it comes to, first of all, the code names, I think like Anaconda, I laugh when I see that. When it comes to expecting new revisions of these new revisions, I wouldn't be too terribly surprised. One reason why I normally see companies do this, I mean, I would cite security concerns here, but the Xbox One hasn't had, you know, a hack as we know it on it, like a boot ROM hack or anything, so you don't have too much to worry about there for console revisions. But it's normally just from not companies cutting corners. They just see, you know, after so many years in development, they're able to use different chipset, they're able to use something, you know, change the motherboard in a certain way, make something better, really just make the same console and optimize it further with different parts or different layouts for less money. And they could either pass the discount onto the consumer or not, depending on what they do. So I'm not too surprised if we see like version 2s of the S and the X in this case here. With OG Xbox and Xbox 360 backwards compatibility, I'm not at all surprised that that would be kept in there. I would actually be appalled and shocked if it was removed, just because it is completely software based for the Xbox One platform, so there would be no reason to block it on a new revision of the console. But that game core thing does have me a little bit confused. It looks like it could just kind of be a skin overall, but if they're really going to be implementing it as another OS to add in there, that's where I feel like I'm going to be a bit like Colin was with the last topic, where I'm just like, I am not sure about this. I really don't know how I feel, but I need to see like the implementation on this here and what exactly they're trying to put out. Again, these are rumors, but that's kind of just how I'm feeling about it.
So this rumor, so I want to start with Game Core OS, because when I first read this, I had no idea what that meant. So the Xbox One runs on Windows, so we're all clear on this. The original launch ran on Windows 8, and then I think one of the big, a couple years later, they did like a big system update that was disguised as like a big UI layout overhaul, which is what it totally was, but it also was a sort of internal upgrade to Windows 10. And so I looked into it. I decided to look into it, and it seems like Microsoft is hiring and currently working on something called Windows Core OS. One iteration is called One Core, and the other is Game Core. And it sounds like, to me, what it sounds like is actually a lot less interesting than this initially is leading on to, which is that basically it's Windows 11, and that's the reason why they're giving it such a weird name is because starting with Windows 7 and then Windows 8 and now with Windows 10, Microsoft has been trying to sort of branch out what they can put Windows on, because Windows has been on the Intel/IBM based x86 architecture for 30 years going on, maybe, like a ridiculous long amount of time. And now we have new processors out. We have your ARM chips. You know, AMD kind of has always been wanting to do new stuff beyond emulating x86, and Intel's kind of slowly falling behind. And so with Windows 7, they started experimenting with a mobile version that never came out. 8 had RT, which ran on a Tegra 4, I believe, but didn't sell because it didn't have Windows program support. And now you have Windows 10 for ARM, and you have what the hell is they calling it? Windows 10 IoT, which are like these ARM based versions of Windows that run on Qualcomm ARM chips. I think we do legitimately have ARM based Windows laptops out on the market right now, which is a really big deal. I don't know why like every tech site has not picked up on that, because that's actually really important that they have x86 based Windows programs running on like mobile processors. Raspberry Pis can now run Windows. And I mean, we saw it with 8, and we saw it with 10, where they're trying to also make it so that Windows is this like OS that you can put on, you know, your desktop, your laptop, your tablet, perhaps a mobile device. They basically want to make a version of Windows that can size up to any device possible, which is the whole point of Core OS. So what it seems like Game Core OS is essentially the same thing, but maybe better optimized for gaming, which is I guess it would work the same way that Windows 10 Enterprise kind of works, or Windows Enterprise in general, where it doesn't have as much bloat. It kind of frees up the RAM and hard drive usage so that more attention can be focused on games, and Windows kind of has that right now with Windows quote-unquote game mode. So that's that out of the way. So basically, expect the new version of the next Xbox to have Windows on it.
Which wouldn't be too surprising
It's the
at
least
all.
shocking thing, right? It's so less interesting once you condense it into a TLDR. Windows 11 on the Xbox whatever. There you go. As for the consoles themselves, as I said earlier, the Xbox One X is such a ridiculous jump in power that I can't even imagine what a next Xbox after that would be. And apparently that is the situation where, because it says here in this little Google Docs we have, the Lockhart console might just be a refreshment of the Xbox One X hardware, which makes sense. You just make a $300 version or a $200 version of the Xbox One X, since you've already made it at a point where it's really expensive. So just reuse the same hardware and make it cheaper, and bada bing, that's your baseline console. But then we have this new one that's more powerful, and it makes sense. But isn't it weird to have a console that's like different varying levels of power at launch? Like, it's already weird to have it mid-generation, but like we kind of were like, but the base one's for 1080p and this mid one is for 4K. What is it now? The base one is for 4K and the more powerful one is for like even more 4K or 8K? Can we even do 8K this early on with graphical hardware? I doubt it. And then where does the discless, like, Xbox play into this? Are they really gonna have 3 Xbox consoles? And it's also like, I also get why they'd want to make a cheaper Xbox One X and a new console, because they want to phase out the old Xbox One, because that's gonna be really not powerful enough to push new next generation stuff. But Microsoft said they want to have both backwards and forwards compatibility. So how is this gonna work? How are you in the future gonna buy the Xbox 2 game and you put it in your Xbox Lockhart, which is an Xbox One X, but it's different in name, but not in hardware? Will those games play on Xbox One X? How are they gonna tell consumers that it will work on Xbox One X without saying that it'll also work on Xbox One S? Will the next generation of consoles just be called the Xbox One 2? Will they do that thing they did with Xbox 360 backwards compatibility, where they have to re-release all the games, but they say Xbox One and Xbox whatever on the top of the disc case? I have a lot of questions. I think the hardware is actually more confusing than the OS part.
You know, I was gonna say, looking at this here, it didn't just, I think this is from me being a bit tired, it didn't just click for me until about like halfway through your rant or so, where I was like, oh, this is technically a next-gen rumor here. So honestly, what I can expect to happen would be, I feel like the Xbox Maverick would be the budget version of the Xbox One in its current state right now, with the One S here, that we could see shortly before or around the time the Xbox 2 in this case comes out. I'm not exactly sure what they would be doing, kind of to what you said, with having 2 different powered versions right out the gate. That would be a little bit silly, but when I kind of wanted to revisit the backwards compatibility there. This is what I've talked about this with friends before several times, and not just on the Xbox. I feel like the PS4 should do this as well too, whenever the successor comes out. But I feel like because they have, you know, the architecture there, they've had people developing on the Xbox One since 2013 or even prior to that, since developers should hopefully know it at this case. I feel like what would be appropriate, if possible, is to not only bring in, all of backwards compatibility, and even that's not going to be a huge deal because studies show that backwards compatibility really isn't used that much on the newer systems. This would be more for the developer's sake, and therefore to help out, to give us a better experience when playing games. I feel like for the Xbox 2, they should just make a super overpowered Xbox One. And by that I mean, like, just take, the already available Xbox One stuff, sure, tweak the OS, update it a little bit, throw in 32 gigabytes of RAM, throw in 2 CPUs, whatever you're going to do. I'm just throwing stuff out here. Something where a game designed for the Xbox 2, it will not play at all on the Xbox One. And they have the software to lock that as well too. So you won't have, the forwards compatibility, but you'll still have that backwards compatibility there. So hopefully, the Xbox 2 in this case would play all the games the previous system used, because it would just be a super, super overpowered version, yet it would have its own library locked away that wouldn't play on older hardware.
I guess to clear things up, I get it. No, I probably should have said this earlier. I have no doubt in my mind that backwards compatibility will be a thing on all 3 next-gen platforms. I guarantee, maybe I'm calling it too early, but I kind of guarantee that the next Xbox, the next PlayStation, and the next Nintendo whatever will have backwards compatibility, because I sincerely doubt any of the big 3 are going to drop whatever hardware manufacturers they're currently working with. You can bet your bottom dollar that the next Xbox and the next PlayStation will be running off of AMD APUs just like the last generation did, and you can bet your bottom dollar that whatever Nintendo does next will be Nvidia, because it's just working out for them. That being said, backwards compatibility, I fully expect Xbox Original 360 and Xbox One games to be playable on the next Xbox. However, I just want to kind of reiterate the thing I was going crazy about.
Sure.
If the next... Okay. I guess here's a better way to put it. Imagine if Microsoft released 2 Xbox Ones at the launch of the Xbox One, and one of them was like... I can't even make a comparison because this is such a fucking weird mid-generation thing.
Maybe what Steam failed with when they ended up releasing 30 different versions of the Steam box.
No, because because those are PCs. They can get away with it. No, let me try to explain. Let me explain the weird thing. Xbox One X is really powerful.
Yeah.
The Xbox One base, like the 1/1S, isn't. This rumor is saying that the next generation, that the next Xbox, the base model, will be an Xbox One X with a different name, and then there will be an even more powerful one. And Microsoft have said that they, going forward, want to make sure that games are not only forward compatible so that they work on newer systems, but they are also backwards compatible. What I'm trying to get at here is, are they going to make an Xbox One X, give it a different name, and then say, despite the fact that these 2 consoles share the exact same hardware and can more or less play the same games, this one gets the license to play the new stuff?
That, see, even with that sounding a bit silly, that's what I can envision happening there.
That sucks.
I feel like that's what they would do, though. Not only for the licensing, but also just so developers, essentially, they'll kind of come and say, "Hey, you all been working with the Xbox One for the past 7 years. Well, guess what?
I mean,
you now have 32 gigs of RAM to work with, as opposed to 12."
I imagine that when these new consoles come out, they're gonna stop selling the Xbox One X. Like, I'm not trying to say here like, oh yeah, they're gonna have like the Xbox One X and then the Xbox Lockhart, and it's the same thing, but
Sure.
there's just two different names. You just have to figure out which one you want. No, I imagine they're going to stop development on both the One S and the One X. However, it really just comes down to if it's the same hardware, and the whole point is that the next generation One X is just a refresh. It's like it's the same thing, just a different name, because it's there is no way in hell the Xbox One X isn't going to be powerful enough to play the new games. It's just like, how are they going to designate it?
It'll be kind of like going back to like the base versus the X, where they can still play the same games, but you know, there's some games, do you really want to play them on that original hardware?
Oh no,
like PUBG
I
very
get it.
first patch
I'm just
on
saying
original
that
Xbox One hardware.
I'm just saying it's weird because we already have the base model out right now. It's just gonna have a different name in 2 years, but
I guess what I'm seeing from all these
it's such a weird, bizarre concept. Like it's hard to explain because it's never been done before, and I don't know whether it's brilliant or if they're gonna like ruin it, or if they're just gonna like go like I don't know.
I guess in summary, what I'm seeing here is one of if these, again, they're all rumors, so you know they still have to come to fruition, if anything. But one of them will be a diskless, hopefully budget 1S option. One that will be a refresh, so essentially a SKU update to the One X, and the other one's going to be the Xbox 2. That's what I'm seeing all three of these as right here.
They're gonna have to they need to get some good marketing and some good like brand awareness to make all of that really not confusing going forward.
Yeah, so my thoughts on this rumor is basically, what is Microsoft going to do if they do a similar mid-generation upgrade for the new consoles? Like, if they have the Anaconda and Lockhart consoles, and if they add 2 new SKUs in like 4 years' time after that launch, things are going to get like into 3DO level territory.
I think I should have said this in the earlier discussion. The mid-generation upgrades for these consoles are stupid. And the reason why they're stupid is because they don't do the thing that they're advertised to do. And so, like, I don't like the idea of these things being the norm going forward, because what's the point? Like, okay, so you have these, I don't know, so in 8th gen, everyone had this really weird thing where everything had to be 1080p 60 FPS. But the biggest problem is that nothing was 1080p 60 FPS. The grand majority of PlayStation 4 exclusive games are 30 FPS and 1080p. This would be resolved if everything was 900p, but which is what the Xbox One does, but no, because number is bigger. So then, like, I don't know, like 5 4K TVs came out, and then all of a sudden all these consoles are like, we gotta make 4K versions of our consoles now. Why? Because 4K is gonna be the big thing in like 10 years. Not now, because no one has actually a good reason to upgrade to a 4K TV when only one of the consoles can actually do 4K gaming decently, and you still can't buy the grand majority of movies on UHD. So what's the point? TV is still in 1080i. Oh god. But like, why? Why go forward with this in the next generation when we already, like, the Xbox One X can already do 4K gaming perfectly fine. I imagine that the next PlayStation, which is what we're going to be going into in a second, is also going to do 4K perfectly fine, because the PS4 Pro certainly can't. Like,
see, I almost,
outside of better 4K gaming, unless manufacturers are really going to start pushing for 8K, because sky's the limit at this point, I don't understand the point of a mid-generation upgrade. Just like, have the one console.
See, for me,
it only just makes things confusing for developers and consumers.
See, the thing for me is, well, I guess for consumers, I can get the confusion there. For developers, I've seen two things. I've seen developers say, this is going to be confusing, and developers say, oh my god, this is the hardware we wanted. The way I've specifically talked about the One X before is, I felt like the One X is what the Xbox One should have been right out the gate. The only problem is, some of the technology probably didn't exist to make it at that point, and it would have been stupidly expensive. And then
Yeah.
the PS4 Pro, I would say that to an extent. Like, I would say it kind of teeters between it's what the PS4 original PS4 should have been, but Sony didn't want to, release a $900 console at the time.
It's
and on top of that,
you're overshooting it there.
And at the time, it was really kind of what you said there. It was, this Neo system was really designed to complement PSVR. That was probably its number 2 reason right there.
Yeah. It's.
I don't want mid-gen refreshes to be a normal thing.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be a normal thing.
The thing is, I don't know, because then you have this problem where you optimize your game for the more powerful hardware, but not the less powerful hardware, and like, then what's the point? And then what's the point of having 2 consoles out there? I don't know. I think this is going to be an Xbox only problem. I don't think PlayStation's going to have this problem at all, because they're just going to be able to make the PlayStation 5, and you're going to be like, yeah, it's the PlayStation 5. It's more powerful. It plays the video games. Maybe they'll do a PlayStation 5 Pro later on. I don't know. I think I just see Sony making a PlayStation 5 and it being really powerful and them just calling it a day. I think the problem of having like a bunch of Xboxes is weird.
Yeah, it is. I don't want them to oversaturate it. I don't think they will, but I think it might cause some issues in regards to marketing and maybe getting some consumers confused. And that's not a good way to launch. You really...
I mean, I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's like it makes sense to have like if the 2 next generation Xboxes were like an Xbox One X with like a little bit more horsepower and a new name, and then the slightly cheaper model was the discless one that's basically an Xbox One X with no disc drive. There you go. That's how you make like a difference between the 2 consoles. It's kind of similar to how the 360 had like the core and the arcade and the elite, and how the PlayStation 3 had the one that plays PS2 games and the one that doesn't. But I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if I see the idea of new console, more powerful, also new console, even more so. We'll see, because that means at some point they're gonna have to make a 10th generation console, and that one's gonna have to be even more powerful than the 2 more powerful consoles. Like, you see where I'm getting at here? I don't know.
I think the concept of generational upgrades could be a video on its own. So we won't really get into much of it here, but I think we've all said what we needed to say about Microsoft.
I'm sure someone in the comments will call me a crazy person, but like, I don't know. I think the more you read into it, more and more questions. It's like that Red Letter Media video about Prometheus, where they just have like the wall of questions about everything. like that's where I'm feeling right now about the Xboxes. And don't get me wrong, I think what Xbox is doing right now, everything they've announced, is like super neat and cool. I don't want them to ruin it even more than they already kind of have.
Yeah, I would agree. So, anyways, we want to thank you guys for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for part 3, where we go over our predictions for Sony and Nintendo. Be sure to follow us on our social media pages, including our Facebook and Twitter accounts. Be sure to also support us on Patreon to receive exclusive perks. We want to thank our super patron, the Duke of Dorks. His channel will be linked in the description below as well. We hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we will see you in the next one.